What would you say is the root cause of the current war in Sudan?
It is something similar to external invasion of the country.
The UAE backing the RSF, how would you view their involvement?
Unless and until the international community address the achievements of weapons to the RSF, they can be serious achieving peace in Sudan. They are not investing in peace, they are investing in war and in genocide.
I believe it's important, especially here in London, to ask.
It is the most serious challenge we have had ever in our history. And inshallah, we will prevail on it and will become stronger and stronger.
Good morning, Mr. Ambassador. My name is Dr. Matthew Hedges. I am an academic who specializes on the UAE. I wrote a book on this, but I also experienced, I was tortured in the UAE. I know the country extremely well, and I'm here to discuss with you events in Sudan and predominantly the UAE's involvement. Would you like to give a brief introduction to who you are?
Thank you very much for having me. I am Ambassador Babikir As-Siddiq Muhammad Al-Amin. I'm the head of mission of the Embassy of Sudan in London. I've been working in for the foreign ministry of my country for the past 34 years and had the opportunity to serve in different countries in Europe, Asia, and Africa. And it is great pleasure to have this opportunity to explain to your audience what is going on in Sudan.
Perfect. Thank you. So then, what would you say is the root cause of the current war in Sudan? Is it simply a power struggle between two generals, between President Burhan and General Hemeti? Or is it something much deeper that's tied to the political legitimacy of Sudan as a whole?
Let me start by expressing my sympathy and condolences of our martyrs who have sacrificed their lives for defending our nation, and for also those who have lost their lives during this war imposed on them by RSF, the militia, the Janjaweed militia, which is now named RSF. And as we are talking now, people in Al-Fashir, in Zamzam IDP's camp are still subjected to continuous shelling and ground attacks by this militia, which is largely support, or actually it is a proxy armed forces acting on behalf of the UAE. And that explains what is the war all about, what is it's all about. Definitely it is not a power struggle between two generals. And to be accurate, even describing Hemeti as a general, it is just a matter of joke, because to be a general need someone to be graduated from a military college and to have service for 40 years at least, or something like 40 years, and going through a lot of training courses like that. Hemeti was never had any formal education.
But he was, before the war, he was the deputy of President Burhan, was he not?
I would explain that later on. But so the war, for us, it is a proxy war by the regional sponsor of the RSF to control our country, to appropriate its natural, it is huge natural resources. We have a lot of minerals, we have huge arable lands, the majority of which is not cultivated yet. We have long coast on the Red Sea, and even our geopolitical location, our geostrategic location, being a bridge between Middle East and Sub-Sahara Africa, between different regions of Africa. There are certain regional power who interested and greedy actually to control all this for its own selfish ends. So that is the crux of this war. It is war imposed on us. It is like it is something similar to external invasion of the country, because they are using a large number of mercenaries from places far away as Colombia in South America. So
you actually jumped ahead of what I was going to ask next, which was if you perceive it as a proxy war. But if I'm to take that and extend it a little bit further, what about the support of other countries? It is not simply one of the UAE backing the RSF. There are others involved in hosting, in supplying them, in working alongside them. Are they as guilty? Are they as implicated in this? Or how would you view their involvement?
of course, UAE is used in other countries, unfortunately, collaborating with some countries in the region to pursue its genocidal war in Sudan. I can name Chad, which is the main entry of heavy weapon, of mercenaries. It allowed its airport to be used all through these 2 years to receive the army shipment from UAE, which is destined to the RSF, in violation of Security Council Resolution 1591, which that prohibited arms to be brought to Darfur. So we can name Chad. I can name also Kenya. Kenya is the host of what the RSF attempt to establish what they call a parallel government. And even our army recently discovered boxes of ammunition and arms bearing the name of the Kenyan armed forces. So this, at least there are two countries. And we know UAEs have a regional policy that actually based on sometimes this kind of meddling in the regional security and using insecure government to further their own agenda.
Okay. So you spoke about the perception of the RSF and the UAE being akin to an external war, being a war with external powers. Do you believe that this is against the characteristics of an independent, sovereign Sudan? Or does it go further and actually want to erase certain identities within Sudan? Does it want to erase the modern image of what Sudan is today?
Of course, the second part actually, it is war meant to erase the statehood of Sudan, and to go further, even to erase the national identity of Sudan. It is a war against what is all Sudan been known for. Sudan is always a country of coexistence, of tolerance, of diversity, ethnic diversity, cultural diversity. This war is meant actually, it have ulterior motive, like establishing, sometimes this was mentioned, I mean establishing a national home, what for them, the RSF and support called diaspora Arabs, Arab from the Sahel region. There are some nomadic communities scattered in Sahel countries, in Niger, Mali, Central African Republic, part of Cameroon, South Sudan. And these communities, part of them at least, I wouldn't generalize, but some of their elites do not believe in the national state system. They see themselves as tribesmen. They see the tribal identity for them come first. So one of the objectives of this war also to help like a settler project, a colonizer settler project. They want to effect demographic change in Darfur in particular, and the fertile parts of the country like Al Jazeera and even some of the urban centers. So it is like a settler project. And secondly, if you see what the RSF has done in, for example, National Museum of Sudan, the National Museum, which was, displaying the artifact of Sudan, ancient civilization back 7 years old. They destroyed everything. They looted all these artifacts, and even those the items that they couldn't steal because they are heavy. They just destroyed them and they burned. So it is a deliberate attempt to erase the historical memory, to erase the national identity of the Sudan. And they targeted all the museum, all the National House of Records, the libraries, public libraries, the universities. So it is intentional to erase this the Sudan national identity, the Sudan statehood. They have targeted all the infrastructure, the material and social infrastructure of the country.
Okay.
They have tampered with our social fabric. So
let me then ask, while the recent fighting it was initiated by a rupture, how did the fall of the Omar Bashir regime accelerate this journey, and did that serve as a moment which initiated the rise of the RSF? Did it initiate the evolution from the Janjaweed to the RSF into a formal being?
okay, let me get back to the question you asked earlier. That Hameti was the deputy president of the Sovereignty Council. Actually, as you have rightly mentioned, RSF has been used by the regime, by the former regime, to fight the Darfurian armed struggle movements during the early 2000s up to the fall of that regime. They were there and their number were not that big. I mean, the maximum they have reached like 15 to 20,000. And that was one of the biggest strategic blunders. Anyway, after the revolution was capable of removing Omar al-Bashir regime through protest, and very most importantly, after the protest continued for several months, from December 2018 up to April 2019, the youth, the people, the protesters, because they were youth, they staged a mass sit-in in front of the headquarters of our command of the Sudanese Armed Forces, asking the military to intervene. And there was fear that RSF, being a part of the regime and used by the regime to quell whatever threat the regime was facing, there was fear that they will be against this revolution. They will intervene violently to suppress it. So our armed forces decided to side with the revolution, and they removed al-Bashir regime. And it was thought that the country or the nation will usher into a new era of national consensus, by which all armed forces or armed movement will be brought on board, including the Darfurian armed forces, the other rebellion movements that were fighting the former regime in other part of the country. We emerged from multiple internal conflicts. So it was so that it is wise to let us bring all of them, accommodate all of them, gradually integrate all of them into the national army, because our army is a national professional army which has been in existence for 100 years, and it is a reflection of the diversity of the country. It is the actual embodiment of our nationhood. So the idea was that it is high time all these forces to be either integrated into the national army according to the terms of the national army that the professional army follow everywhere in the world, or they can go through DDR, the disarmament and what you call reintegration, that's a non-process following conflict. But due to the external meddling in our affairs, there was a certain level of vulnerability, because following the removal of this dictatorship, which has been in power for 30 years, you can imagine, and the country was emerging from multiple conflict, was facing formidable economic difficulties. The country has been under international isolation, international sanctions. So there was a great level of vulnerability. Unfortunately, external power uses vulnerability for their own selfish agenda, and they pick RSF as a tool, as a proxy for them to pursue their agenda. And there was a confluence of their national, the regional agenda with the ambition of Hemeti, the leadership of RSF, to become to control everything, to become the ruler, the ruler of the country. So that is how these dynamics led to the war.
So you mentioned and you spoke earlier about the UAE's military and financial support to the RSF. We heard the US sanctioned seven individuals and companies associated to the RSF, and the UAE responded, I believe, last week, stating that these entities had no commercial licenses. Obviously, I can understand the incredible frustration at this, having taken so long to acknowledge this certain cooperation or coordination, that it doesn't impact anything. But can you please help our viewers understand how the UAE utilizes the RSF for regional instability? How and where they've been deployed and why? Because it's not simply one of operating within Sudan, but they've been active in other areas.
Okay, actually, one of the things that explain the close relation between UAE and RSF is that UAE want to use RSF as proxy armed forces. It is a small country with a small population. They don't have big army, national army, but at the same time, they want to compete with a rather bigger regional powers with far larger population. I don't have to name them, but and for to be in a position, that's I guess that's how they think. To be in a position to compete with them, they must have military muscles, and then they find that RSF will provide with that kind of thing that they need, that they lack. And they have been trying, they have seen them, they have been using them in, for example, in Yemen.
Yep.
And in Libya as well.
Yes.
And also to project their power. Because as you know, in international relations, it is enough to just to project your power, that we have a ready military force that I can use any time, because they have regional ambitions, that is not, I mean, compatible with their real, I mean, size. As a, yes, they are wealthy country, but wealth is not all, not everything in international relations.
It's an interesting point here to note that the UAE is recruiting, employing the RSF in external states and fields as part of this power projection, but say Saudi Arabia has RSF soldiers within the kingdom, but they perform a defensive role along the border with Yemen. So there is a slight difference in approach there, while both still pursuing that partner. Let me ask you, you have spoken about the RSF and the UAE's engagement as a form of proxy war, engagement by proxy, an assault on Sudan's sovereignty. If that's the case, and it say is if we were to reduce it to a proxy war, who is the UAE and the RSF fighting? Who are they fighting? If it's a proxy war, who is the other side? You have Sudan, and who then is the UAE competing against?
You can guess. Because as I said earlier, UAE wants itself to be a major regional power. And they have unexplained interest and greed in acquiring ports along the Red Sea.
Correct.
Despite the fact that they have one of the biggest port in the Middle East, Jabal Ali. They don't. So they have this, and they want a role in the area for something that nobody. I mean, only can be guess. That they want to be regional power.
Because of course I understand that the UAE's actions upset many within the region.
Of course,
that there isn't really another power that is aligned with the UAE apart from out of necessity, say logistical necessity in terms of Libya or Kenya. Apart from that, there isn't anyone,
because they became an element of instability, and they want to compete with when they want to change the rules of the order, regional order.
We saw similar events in Yemen and how that's now changing.
They have different. I can tell you, without naming countries, we have problem with all of their neighbors and their, even it is not out, but whoever is following up the situation, he would understand that. And as I said, some governments need to deal with them out of necessity, because and they use this. Unfortunately, they use their wealth and their investment not to in a way of a win-win equation, but they want to control. They just to have the upper hand in everything.
To then look at further powers, further greater powers, I believe it's important, especially here in London, to ask what role Iran and Russia have in Sudan and how they have impacted the war.
Okay, I think for Iran we have just normal relations. We are the last country within the region to normalize our relations with Iran. And all countries, maybe with the exception of Israel, do have normal relation with Iran. I don't think there is any special role for Iran, and it is not about. It is just normal diplomatic relation, and we resume it just maybe a few months ago, if not the latest, maybe a year ago or less. And the same applies for Russia. Russia is always, our relation with Russia has been historically and traditionally, we always have good relation with Russia, even during the Soviet Union era. And we have established and deep rooted relation. I mean, and even during the Cold War era, we maintained a rather balanced position. And we are of course, we need to be to have good relation with everybody.
Mhm.
We recognize that we are emerging from multiple conflicts. We need a lot of help from the international in terms of reconstruction and rebuilding our country. We always look for good relation with the West, with US and with the UK, with Europe, with it. We need good relation with everybody.
Mm.
So, but we can wait. We can wait.
Of course.
If somebody is prepared to help you, so no,
So-
wait until other shows the same interest.
This
Now,
was why I asked about Russia in particular, because if for years they've been engaged alongside the RSF, profiting with them through gold smuggling, through weapons in Darfur and in the west of the country, they've been aligned strongly with your enemy. There's a market, there's a significant shift in their support, but also your interaction with them, the amount of visits of Bogdanov and others, and the increased discussions about possibly, access to Port Sudan, which is a prize that the Russians really want. I understand from Sudan's point of view, as you said, that you need things now, you need to survive, that there is an element of that, but it's quite seen from outside, it's quite a polarizing.
Let me respond by this. First of all, this allegation that Russia as a government, as a state, was siding with RSF, I don't think it is. These allegations are founded or something. Even if you are referring to the former Wagner group, because Wagner group at the end of the day even rebelled against the government, and they were forced and they were dissolved. So for us, Russia has always confirmed its support, and they just confirm and they prove their support to Sudan's sovereignty. So they are against any external intervention in the. That is a principle of their policies when it comes to Africa. They are against the external intervention in internal affairs of countries, domestic affairs of the countries. They are supportive to us in international fora. And we have this very good relation traditionally. We have a lot of cultural exchange. I mean, we have large number of our people who got there.
Do you think that their presence, do you think they will increase their position in Sudan?
Russia, no, not in what sense? I mean, there is a good relation. There is ongoing cooperation. And today, for example, my minister has seen his counterpart, Mr. Lavrov, in Antalya, in Turkey, where they were both are taking part in international diplomatic function. So we have this good relation, and I don't think it is something just linked directly to the war, because always, even throughout different regimes, throughout different political, they have been consistent in supporting Sudan. Okay. And this is the kind of engagement we need. We don't need to. We need like mutual respect of sovereignty. We don't have to actually to agree on everything to have a good relation.
So the reason I ask those questions are because, from a Western perspective, these are supplementary, additional issues which we would have reservations and issues about. And so that's then the segue. to ask, as we're here in London and you're the representative here in the UK, the UK has a historical legacy in Sudan. There's a degree of responsibility and power that comes with that. The power being home to a big diaspora, being historically connected and linked. The legal system, it's still one and the same. But more recently, has the UK changed its course in regards to Sudan, and what do you think has encouraged it?
Changing towards what direction? I mean, positively or?
So, an example of say last year when at the UN, when
I understand.
Yeah.
Actually, as you rightly said, Sudan and the UK share a common history, and we used to have. I mean, there is a certain level of common understanding. I mean, each people know other, and our older generation. I always say this. Our older generation, the generation who lived during the British rule of Sudan, always remember British for being fair people, for being good administrator, and there isn't something like anti-British sentiment as a result of the colonial era. And you might know that Sudan was not a proper British colony. It was under what it's called condominium, the Anglo-British or Anglo-Egyptian condominium.
Okay.
So we always look for having positive and good relation with the UK, built on this common history, people-to-people relation, cultural relation. You rightly said many of our technocrats, our civil servants have been trained here. Right now we have around maybe 7,000 medical doctors of Sudanese medical doctors who are working in the UK, contributing very much to the NHS system. And we want positive engagement.
But my point is, they attempted. There was a degree of openness and engagement at the international level with Sudan, but there was a significant shift in this approach. In particular, the UAE reacted very badly to the UK and its hosting of an event at the UN, where afterwards it cancelled a series of meetings with ministers here in London. And since then, it's been my reading that the UK has taken a U-turn in its approach to Sudan.
I don't think that is very accurate. We still the approach of the approach adopted by the UK government is still leave much to be desired, to say the least. There is a narrative here which is prevailing in different, maybe not only in official circles or maybe by the media sometimes, that there is a sort of equivalence between SAF, Sudanese Armed Forces, and RSF, and that there should be a neutrality between two of them. And we don't think that is the right approach, because when a country faced a threat to its very existence, now our very existence as survival as a state is at stake. So it is not time when you start asking whether you have a civilian or military government led and this kind of issue, because now the priority is to maintain the sovereignty, the existence, our people life, right to life, our statehood, to maintain it and to protect it.
I think a good example is when there were members of the RSF that were welcomed into the House of Lords.
Yes, of course. And I give another example. For example, when ISIS threatened certain countries in the Middle East, and the international community come to support the existing government, the national army of this government, and they established what they call the International Coalition Against ISIS. Because ISIS at a certain time seized considerable chunks of these countries and established their own government and own system. And so the international community didn't speak about, let them talk to each other, let them be neutral, let us maintain this impartiality. What we expect from the international community in general and from the UK to support our national institution headed by the Sudanese Armed Forces, because it is the oldest national institution. And by the way, was established by the British themselves in 1925. And we fought alongside the UK, the Western, the European, what you call the Allies during the World War II. We fought against the fascists in Libya, in Eritrea, and we expect them to support us, to support the survival, the existence, the sovereignty, the territorial integrity of Sudan, our people life, our people right to life. Because this war is not, the RSF is not fighting the army, the Sudanese army. They are fighting the people.
It's actually, so coming back to why and how the UK has changed its approach, without putting words in your mouth, it is my opinion that the UA has exerted significant pressure upon the government here to change their approach. That is my opinion.
Okay.
And I've seen it in many different ways.
If now people want this war to stop, the single most important element in prolonging the war is the UAE intervention. If the UAE supplies of heavy weapons, of sophisticated weapons to the RSF to use to shell Al-Fashir now, as we are talking, to shell the IDBS camps in Zamzam. So unless and until the international community address this issue, address the UAE role, the intervention, the supplies of the weapons, the shipments of weapons, the uninterrupted shipment of weapons to the RFF, they can be serious about achieving peace in Sudan.
And this actually gets onto my next question about the international community. In London here on April 15th, UK hosting a conference on Sudan. It's invited 20 countries, including the UAE. And yet Sudan's own government is absent. That's why some have called it the meeting of the perpetrators. What do you think this as a symbol, as a message, as a demonstration of the international community's position towards Sudan? What do you think that tells you?
Okay, we are in continuous discussion with the UK government. We expressed our views very clearly in very unequivocal way that any attempt to resolve the crisis in Sudan must be a Sudanese-led and a Sudanese-owned. And if people want to achieve something on the ground, this cannot be done at all in the absence of the main stockholder, which is the Sudanese government. And this one. Secondly, we understand that many, sisterly and friendly countries, or a number of sisterly and friendly countries will take part in that meeting. Of course, we are not happy that Sudan is excluded in that meeting. And I don't think it will yield, actual, or it will have actual, the outcome will have an actual impact on the ground in the absence of the Sudanese government. That's what I can say about it.
It seems inherently designed to fail, unless, of course, the objective is to put pressure on, say, the UAE to get them to stop.
I don't think that need to have a conference. If that's really the purpose, no, it is not the right approach, because it is very clear now. It is the evidence is overwhelming, and you don't need to hold the conference. And especially when you say the conference is, bringing state and country who are focused on focusing on and investing in a peaceful way forward for the Sudanese people, because definitely UAE is not that kind of. They are not investing in peace. They are investing in war and in genocide. Definitely, Kenya is not among this category, and Chad. So that we have been expressing this to our friends and our partners in the UK. The conversation and the dialogue is still going on.
Speaking about evidence and hearing, of course, what's been going on at the ICJ, I wanted to ask or suggest that the evidence that Sudan claims it has against the UAE for its actions, that is publicized for the International Court of Opinion, for individuals, for that awareness to be raised universally, because the UAE can fight it in a legal court, as it's doing now by claiming jurisdictional issues. But if unequivocal evidence is publicized, pressure then goes on individual governments to act in kind. You may not get one, but it will go to another. They can't go and deny those accusations in every country around the world and expect to come off scot-free, as we would say. Does that make sense?
Of course it did. And actually that's what's going on. But for the ICJ case, you have to follow the legal procedures. You have to present their case first to be accepted as a case and to overcome this obstacle of the jurisdiction. This is a legal matter, procedural matter. At a later stage, you will provide your whatever the huge body of evidence. But having said this, actually the international community is not in short of evidence. The leading international media like New York Times, Washington Post,
people are aware.
CNN, Wall Street Journal, The Guardian, they publish a lot on their own, and investigative international media. Organizations like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, the University of America, Yale University, scientific humanitarian research scientific lab in Yale University, the World Observatory.
If it comes from a stated government, it's an official document of sorts.
But these are testament and evidence from neutral and impartial institution. I mean, nobody can accuse New York Times, for example, of favoring Sudan government or having an anti-UAE position or sentiment. And the same applies for CNN, for Channel 4, or even not this, let alone all of this, even the UN Security Council panel of independent experts, long time ago, more than a year ago, they pointed out that there is very credible evidence that UAE is fueling the war, is presenting. So the international community knows this very well. But unfortunately, the Security Council, because it is a political body, wouldn't want to fulfill or to exercise its duty, its responsibility. And you remember that we tabled a complaint on the 28th of March last year, and the Security Council was supposed on this, supported by all evidence and details, and it was on the agenda of the Security Council for the session of, I think, 30th of April last year. And somehow that was changed.
Yes.
Somebody intervened to block that discussion. Until now, they never discussed that. Had they done that before, a year ago, they could have saved a lot of lives, innocent lives. They could have helped bringing an early end for the war. So the international community, for many reasons, many countries put their commercial interest with the UAE above all other considerations, including the responsibility to act against genocide. And the case we brought at the ICJ, it is meant as a wake-up call for the international community. Look, they brought people from Colombia, from Eastern Europe, from former Soviet Union countries. The pilots, the people who are using,
Kyrgyz and Kazakh planes.
Yes, they are using strategic drones to attack power plants and to attack hospital. Our main power plant, the biggest producer of our electricity, has been attacked like 10 times.
So this was why I asked the question earlier. I pushed a bit on Russia because this is the Emiratis are very, very, very close to the Russians. Very close. And what the Russians have done in Sudan, they started off with the mercenaries. They go and extract the wealth. And then they, like in Ukraine, they get the mercenaries in, then they go and attack the strategic critical infrastructure. This is the exact same thing as what the Russians...
But now the strategic this strategic drone are not Russian.
No, the Chinese probably.
Chinese or Serbian, some of them Ukrainian. And when you have money, because it is bought by UAE, and this arm industry, it is about money.
Of course.
It is even from the UK, from US, we have captured American weapons in the places that we have regained. There is a heavy artillery by name of what you call it, cornet.
Cornet, Cornet. 10 guns.
That our army have never had, because for a long time we have never have cooperation with military cooperation with the US. So this army were bought by UAE, and you are aware of the discussion at the US Congress.
So what is the humanitarian situation currently? What is the state of it in Sudan today?
Okay, this is a very important question. In terms of humanitarian situation, because of the war, of course, caused a lot of suffering, a lot of, a lot of atrocities have been committed. A lot of, you can imagine that millions of people have lost either their home, literally, or just find their homes as just skeleton walls, because there was a large-scale looting scheme, and for example, the capital city, Khartoum, had a population of around 10 million people. 10 million people that constitute roughly quarter of our population, the country population. When RSF took over Khartoum, because they were deployed there before the war, they were everywhere in the capital. They were busy. So when they decided when they staged their military coup, they simply took control of the very places that they were supposed to guard. Now they deploy the soldiers in the houses of ordinary people. That's why I said they were not fighting the Sudanese army, they are fighting the people. They expelled the people from their homes. I mean, like several hundred of thousands of houses being used as center for military operations. They stage snipers for the high building. They use it for the snipers. They turn them to storehouse for the heavy weapons. They put their heavy artillery in the houses to shell the other urban center, the other residential centers that the people are still there. And now we have like 2 million people who got back to their homes after the national army depleted the Khartoum area and Al Jazeera and White Nile, and so they just found their houses like just walls. Even they removed the windows, the doors, everything, and they lost their means of living. And the RSF was following a deliberate strategy of starvation. There was no famine. We produce a lot of grain, but the RSF wouldn't allow food assistance to be delivered to the areas where they are.
Let me ask you, given the scale of atrocities that are going on across Sudan, we have seen some discussion by a small handful of politicians in the US, Senators Meek and Jacobs, have attempted to reintroduce a bill on Sudan to enforce an arms embargo against the UAE for its backing of the RSF. How do you think this or other similar initiatives could succeed? What do you think they need to secure those initiatives? I'm asking this because this is one of the most fundamental issues of the war that could end it in a very short time and window.
As I said, the shortcut, the easiest way to end the war, just to ask, to compel, actually, not to ask, to force the UAE to stop supplying heavy weapon and all kind of weapon and machines to the RSF. That is the easiest and the straightforward and the shortcut for ending the war. As I repeat again, as we are talking now, Zamzam camp is the first place in Sudan that the UN said there was a famine going on. That was in August 2024. And they said the answer should be using Adiri crossing from between Chad and Sudan, and to be open to save the people from the famine. And my government accepted to open that, to use that crossing, Adiri crossing from Chad to Sudan, since the mid of August last year. Now it is like 6 months, like
9 months.
9 months. 9 months. And still, the people of Zamzam couldn't get the food they need. And we have been asking the international community how much assistance you have delivered to the Zamzam camp. There was no answer, because instead of using Adri crossing for bringing food, RSF is using it to bring in heavy weapon, bring in strategic drone, heavy artillery, and to shell the very same IDBS camp which was meant to get the food. And so you see how it works. So until, and as I said earlier, until and unless the UAE compelled to stop this supply, because it has been uninterrupted since the beginning of the war and before that actually.
My observation is that certainly in the West, they may not be open in criticism of the UAE. They may not be publicly condemning it. My belief and understanding is that there is certainly a large degree of dissatisfaction with their actions. That they could be encouraged to change their opinions, to change their minds, and actually compel them, but that space from thought to action is still being resisted by UAE pressure. And that's just simply my observation.
Yes, this is because of the commercial and economic interest.
Correct.
Because you know the Western countries are going through economic crisis due to this, and before actually, even before the policies of President Trump, and the top priority is given to investment, to trade, and this slogan of human rights, fighting genocide, fighting terrorism come second, especially when it is about other communities. It is unfortunately like a racial point of view.
So then, Your Excellency, let's last question. So, Ambassador, what message do you then have for the Sudanese people in terms of your aspirations for the future, your realistic projections, and the path that will be taken to secure the livelihood, the peace, the stability? What hope can you give?
Let me say that I'm very proud of my people for the courage, for the resilience, for the steadfastness they have shown through this war. Our people have once again proved that they are like gold. When the gold is just become brighter and stronger when subjected to fire. And that's what have the world seen. Now we became stronger, we become more united, and despite the fact that the international community at large let us down, they just gave us sometimes lip service. There was no real solidarity and real support by international community to our Sudanese people. But nevertheless, our Sudanese people, with the help and the Sudanese armed forces and the people resistance, what we call the supporting forces, were capable of quelling this heavily supported invasion. I would say like external invasion, because when you have like 200,000 of mercenaries fighting alongside this militia, which is already have like 100 or 200,000 on their own, in addition to this mercenaries, and with an uninterrupted supply of very sophisticated and heavy weapons coming from wealthy countries like UAE, and our Sudanese armed forces, our people, managed to liberate now we liberated all the areas that RSF had actually occupied, maybe with the exception of Darfur, the four state of Darfur, and Al-Fashir. Al-Fashir has been resisting this invasion for a whole year. Al-Fashir has been under siege for a whole year and still resisting and still putting a lot of, money to quell a lot of like 200 ground attack and been shelling on the daily day, but they are still resistant, they are still intact, and that's very give me a great hope that after the end of the war, which will inshallah will take place shortly, there will be a rebirth of our nation, more strong and more united, and the lessons that we learn will benefit us. It is the most, serious challenge we have had ever in our history, in our contemporary history, that we have never had. We have never faced a similar challenge, but will emerge stronger, and will correct a lot of things that lead to the current scenario. And let me say another point, that for a long time, our leadership in the Sudanese armed forces, our government, have done their best to avoid this scenario. But there were insistence by the regional sponsor to let this happen, and inshallah we'll prevail on it, and will become stronger and stronger.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for your time, and good luck.
Thank you.